This is Rusk Cemetery in Bruce County, Ontario. It lies 6 kilometers north of the town of Paisley in Elderslie Township. Once neglected, Rusk Cemetery gained new life thanks to the efforts of one person, Mary MacKay. Over the years, the cemetery was not maintained and became overgrown. Gravestones were broken or covered over. Something had to be done, so in 2001, Mary MacKay approached Elderslie Township Council and got their backing for her cemetery restoration project. Mary was helped by another member of the Bruce County Genealogical Society, Judy MacKinnon. They went to work, clearing away brush and digging up buried stones. If stones were in pieces, they assembled them and had them set in concrete. As the work progressed, Mary mapped the burial plots, noting all the inscriptions on the headstones. In 2004, she published a book recording every burial in Rusk Cemetery. Rusk Cemetery is unique. The people buried here, the pioneers of Elderslie Township, came largely from one place, Colonsay in Argyllshire. Colonsay is a small island off the west coast of Scotland. The laird of Colonsay in the 19th century was Archibald McNeill, who was succeeded by his cousin, John McNeill. Many of the McNeill tenant farmers emigrated to Canada, attracted by stories of free land in the newly opened Queen's Bush in Upper Canada. Before 1850, this land was exclusively Ojibwe country. Then the Europeans arrived, eager to set down roots in a new land. The settlers from Colonsay made their way to the newly surveyed townships of Elderslie, Arran, and Saugeen. Soon they were joined by other families who had emigrated from Colonsay to Prince Edward Island one generation earlier, and by families who had settled in other parts of Upper Canada. They stuck together, gathering at this one spot in central Bruce County. Rusk Cemetery is named after John Rusk, who donated 1 acre of his land for use as a burying ground. The Rusks settled here from Ireland, unlike most of their Gaelic-speaking neighbours who came from Scotland.
That's why they call it Rusk Cemetery, because this was a Rusk farm. There's not a Rusk buried here. There's no Rusks in here. The Rusks are buried up the road in Salem Cemetery, and some in Southampton.
John Rusk and his sons took up 1,000 acres on the 10th concession of Elderslie Township. An obituary in the Paisley Advocate noted the death of John Rusk in Southampton. He died in 1889 at the age of 83. Most of the plots in the cemetery have space for 6 family members, although some have places for 4 or 8. Some plots have graves with no headstone on them, and some plots are empty. Here are buried the first settlers of Elderslie Township, pioneer families like Blue, Cameron, Galbreath, McKinnon, McNeill, and Munn. They arrived after Elderslie was opened for settlement in 1852. The names on the headstones reflect the predominance of settlers from Scotland who spoke Gaelic. Many names have the prefix Mac, such as MacArthur, MacDonald, MacDougall, McNeill, and McLagan. The strong Scottish component is reflected in the tax collector's roll for the year 1854. Of 64 names, 26 have the prefix Mac, and 11 of those are McNeill. Many of those buried here belong to the Baptist Church at Williscroft, as that church had no cemetery of its own. Rusk Cemetery was also known as the Baptist Cemetery. Like so many pioneers, many of those buried in Rusk Cemetery died before their time, especially from tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis affected every family, especially the young adults, and there's a 9-year-old girl that's buried here with two, not so many older people, and I have no idea why. But when this pandemic was going on the last few years, it made me think of what those people went through, not knowing when one of their young people were going, because they had no cure for it. They had no vaccination to take in those days. But this cemetery has a lot, hardly a family that hasn't been infected. There are eight beds there, and that whole family was wiped out with TB, and they're all buried there. One of the sons was the first to go, and that's the mother and father are there. The reason for the plot being totally covered with cement was after they buried all the people with TB, they covered it over with cement so that it wouldn't get out and spread to other people. It was that serious for them.
For many years, a map of the burial plots at Rusk Cemetery, written on the back of a calendar, hung in the kitchen in Stuart Cameron's home on Concession 10. He was a trustee of the cemetery.
There was a map at one time of this cemetery that was hanging on the back of the kitchen door in Stuart Cameron's house, and he had it drawn out in little squares, but the only thing that was written on it was the last name of the family, and it didn't say who. Sometimes it said Archie McNeill because there were so many McNeills but mostly it was just McNeill or Dara.
The Rusk map spent some time in the office of the municipality of Arran Elderslie. However, Glenys Johnson, president of the Bruce County Genealogical Society, was concerned about its fragile condition. With the municipality's approval, in December 2022, Glenys delivered the map to the Bruce County Archives, where it is now preserved for future generations. At Rusk Cemetery, some people are buried without markers. The only sign of a burial may be a depression in the ground.
There's obviously been burials all there in that empty space, but we didn't find any stones.
See, there's a burial here somewhere. I'd bet money on it. Yeah,
Nice.
see, there's another burial right here. You can tell where they are. For an older cemetery in this part of the country, this one is well looked after. It really is.
There are no longer any more burials in Rusk Cemetery. In any case, the demand for space in the cemetery has greatly declined because of the increase in cremations.
I would say right now 90% of the burials are all cremations. You know, it doesn't take up much room, and you can put them on top of the burials that are there. Makes a big difference.
In 1969, a fund for cemetery upkeep was used to erect a new fence and gate across the front, with a nameplate above the gate. It reads Rusk Cemetery, but the local name is Rusk's Cemetery. In succeeding years, the cemetery lacked maintenance and became overgrown. Gravestones were broken or buried. In 2001, Mary MacKay started a project to clean up Rusk Cemetery. Mary has a long-time interest in local history and has ancestors from Scotland and Ireland. Mary approached the Elderslie Township Council with her proposal to restore the cemetery. the council totally supported her plan and enlisted Hans Hagemeier of Tara to lead a work party. Clearing out brush from overgrown graves was a constant chore.
Well, first of all, in the line of restoration, we have to take those trees out every year. One year wasn't so much of a bush, it was a tree about that big around.
If they found stone pieces, they fit them together like a jigsaw puzzle. The assembled fragments were set in concrete. Another member of the Bruce County Genealogical Society, Judy MacKinnon, helped Mary with the fieldwork in the cemetery. While Mary and Judy worked on the gravestones, local historian John Weichel followed their progress in the newsletter of the Bruce County Historical Society. He printed a photo of them trying to identify a loose headstone using a tentative map of burial plots. Mary and Judy needed help from Elderslie Township for the heavy lifting. In charge of the cemetery restoration for the township was Hans Hagemeier.
In my days working, I was works foreman in the Tara area, and the mayor asked me if I could bring my crew down here and do this cemetery work here. So we brought, and I didn't bring everybody down, but we came down and we worked at it here. The council was approached about doing the cleanup here.
That's right.
And Ron Oswald was our mayor, and he said, go up there and fix it.
Yeah.
Like, we just went down here and it was part of our work day. You know, spent days down here working at it, and just we lifted a lot of the stones were right off. You know, we lifted them off, poured new bases where we needed them, reset the stones. So we brought the backhoe down, and I borrowed a sling from the Owen Sound Vault Works. I know the fellow there very well, and we got a big pad for it to lift them up and swing it around, and the backhoe would lift them up. Set them to the side, pour the cement, and reset it a week later.
Cleaning a stone calls for a wire brush.
These here, there's names on all of them, but you have to get some cleaner and a wire brush and go at it.
You know,
That does it, yeah.
a hoof-brush is what I used.
Talking to me about cleaning a tombstone, and so I said, well, how does one clean a tombstone? And she's like, oh, with a hoof brush. I'm like, oh. I didn't tell her I had no idea what a hoof brush was.
A fallen headstone can be reset in place with concrete.
That's snapped off. To fix that isn't that big a job. You know, you can buy special cement on there, but you just form this up big enough, set this in and brace it and pour cement, because there's no writing on it until you get to here. So pour that much cement around it and you've got it standing again.
Smaller pieces missing from a headstone can be glued back on.
3 years that the
So you can get to put them back together again. You can come in. You'd have to have somebody with a cement drill, and just drill a hole through here, hole through that, and put a steel pin in it, and set it on. And you can buy liquid glue now, and just stick it on, and it'd be there forever. Really, it would.
Mary and Hans made a small discovery at Alexander McLean's marker.
There's these other stones here. You know, like they're just sitting there. They haven't been here very long. Somebody's dropped them off, and they haven't. Fine?
This is when they started mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
And they turned these up, and a lot of these stones have things on the front and the back.
What was it? No.
Yeah, there's printing on there.
No, that's just, you know, what this is? A piece of scrap stone that they used for
Yeah. For putting in the corner of the grave.
Yeah. You know what upsets me when they leave these here like this now. Somebody's going to hit that with a lawnmower and chip the chunk off again.
Yeah, that's happened over in that far corner of that stone.
No, that one's bare. Oh, there's just that one.
In Ontario, it's a law that municipalities must care for abandoned cemeteries. The Township Council sent a work crew to clean up Rusk Cemetery.
And work-wise, the township crew cleaned up the scruff that was around and put in the new bases for all the stones. And
Hans Hagemeier has some advice for those planning to restore a cemetery.
Get somebody that's interested in the cemeteries and get backing, good backing from the mayor. You know, he's the top man you have to deal with sometimes if you run into problems, but get somebody and even go out into the community and get people that are interested. That's a big thing. You know, if it hadn't been for Mary, the cemetery would never have been done. It just wouldn't have. You know, she's very interested, and she was great to work with. That's important. You know.
was she?
Among the many stories coming out of Rusk Cemetery is that of the discovery of the Hammond marker by Mary MacKay's neighbor, Marion Hammond. It had been totally buried.
This is the only stone of its kind in this cemetery, but they're pretty common in the Scottish cemeteries where I visit, like flat on the ground. This stone was totally buried. Had no idea that it was here at all. And Marion Hammond, who this is her ancestors, knew that this was the lot where the stone should be, but we hadn't found it. And I didn't even know she was here, and I was coming across the side road. Oh, there's somebody in the cemetery, I gotta go see what they're doing. And as I was walking across, I saw something or other sticking up, a corner of it sticking up, and that you could see it right from the road. So we kept on digging. I went home and got a shovel and something digging, and we unearthed all of that and fit it together, except for, as you can see, there's a couple of stones that are missing. And so then we unearthed it all. How are we going to get it ready for cementing? So we got a big sheet of plywood and removed it over here piece by piece, and then the township put on the cement foundation for us, and we thought that they would maybe put it back, but no, they said you do a better job than that than us. So Marion and I had to come back and move it for the second time over onto here.
There are several unique monuments in Rusk Cemetery. One is the box-type tomb of John McNeill, located immediately inside the gate. He was born in Colonsay in 1839 and died in 1872. The stone tomb is crowned with a large marble cross and enclosed by a wrought iron fence. John McNeill died in a particularly gruesome accident, run over by his horses.
So the island of Colonsay is owned by Laird John McNeill. No connection to the other McNeills in this cemetery. And this is his grandson, who had been in India in the battle, the war there, and then he came back home to Scotland. Then he came out here took up land on the Elora Road and was clearing it like all the other ones were. Hired a hired man and a cook that wasn't a married fellow, And he had cut a bunch of logs and was going down what they call the Hog's Back into Paisley. And this wagon ran up against the horses. The horses spooked and down they went and ran over the John McNeill, and he died in about 5 or 6 hours. There wasn't anything they could do for him in those days. So the settlers had to get their act together. They knew him, you know, but he was still of a higher class than them, and they buried him here. These two particularly interest me because there's no stone here for Flora McNeill, and she's buried here, I know that. This is her husband. She lived to be almost 100, and I had a lot of difficulty trying to find her death certificate or that to find out where she was, but her husband's here, and a son in his teens who died with tuberculosis. And I keep thinking that this is, and her daughter's over here, married the Munn, and the Munn son, or grandson, is buried here, and in my thinking, he was the one who should have put up a stone for his grandmother. He didn't do it. So he's in the back of my books.
Rusk Cemetery also contains several rare white bronze monuments made in St. Thomas, Ontario. White bronze is an alloy of copper, zinc, and tin with a blue-gray patina used in grave markers starting in the 1870s. Monuments of white bronze are ornately sculptured and are hollow inside.
I think this is Alexander's and his family, and that's John's and his family. And then there was another brother, Donald, who became the minister at Baptist Church. These are zinc, and this stone, years ago, for years now, somebody wrote lightning on there, and I have no idea whether they are authentic or not. You see, there's a hole in it at this side. And these two families settled down the Elora Road between here and Burgoyne. And this is their father here. That stone was down and was buried, and we did well to find it when we were restoring the cemetery. And there's another one that should be like that, of a child that died, and this father came with this son and his family, and this unmarried son who married shortly after he got here. And the father died in 54, and as far as I know, they came in 54, but I think maybe it must have been sooner than that, but I can't prove it.
Stuart Cameron is descended from the Camerons of Mull and the McNeills of Colonsay. He was a trustee of Rusk Cemetery and is buried here. Mary MacKay explains how the Camerons came to Elderslie Township thanks to Sarah Jane McNeill running off with the hired man.
The Cameron family that's buried here did not come from Colonsay. They came from another little island near there, but the lady, Sarah Jane, was a McNeill. And the McNeills had money, and they had this hired man, Cameron, James Cameron. And of course, Sarah Jane ran off with the hired man and wasn't very well accepted by the family. But when she was raised by her uncle, and he was uncle was from Colonsay. So when she and James Cameron took up, they left Scotland, left the island where they were originally living, and went to Scotland, went to Colonsay, and then they came out here. And she was always known as the one that had the family that had the money. So they settled first of all down country down near Mona Mills area, and then as they people did, men did in those days, they came up here to try to get a lot, to get a farm. It was Sarah Jane who came to check out on the farm if they would buy this, and they bought that farm from Rusk. This is the next generation down, and I think the other Cameron stone must be down at the other end of this, maybe. But everybody else died off in that family except for Stuart, who was a bachelor here, and he was related to my mother-in-law. So Stuart Cameron always came for Christmas with us and Thanksgiving and those kind of family things, although he wasn't related to me, but he was related to Jim. And he was buried here then. But as long as he was living, he was very anxious to keep the cemetery in good shape, but with his passing, that's when it fell apart. And his sister, whose name, strangely enough, is put on this stone right there, daughter of this couple, there she is, Jean Sheriff, wife of Alfred Sheriff, interred in Jasper, Alberta. So there's an example of putting somebody's name on a stone that's not buried here, but this is where she would have been buried, I guess. That's all you need to know about the Camerons, I think.
Before Rusk, Mary researched Salem Cemetery, 4 kilometers to the east.
I had done Salem Cemetery first. That's where all of my husband's ancestors are buried, and that's where there was a church that we went to. It was my first interest and needed looking into. And when I got it done, then I thought, well, maybe I could do this cemetery the same way. It was a totally different story because there is nobody buried here now that has immediate ancestors living in the area. So I didn't have anybody that was sharing their family information with me. So I had to research it all, and I've had people come from the West Coast and several from PEI and from around this area looking for their ancestors since I did it. They have contacted me, but when I started in, I had nobody that had descendants living in this area.
A man from Missouri helped with his information on Bruce County cemeteries.
There was a man by the name of John Sheets from Missouri who had a commission to, what was he? And he had ancestors buried here. No, he didn't have ancestors buried here. He was looking up for one of his clients, I guess you'd call it, their ancestors. And he was here quite interested in all of Bruce County. He was at our Bruce County genealogy meetings. So when I started this, I contacted him, and he made me out on little recipe cards the couple's name at the top from Colonsay, and then if he had them, their descendants. So that was a start.
Mary planned to spend 3 years in research.
So we kind of had a plan to do for a 3 year span that we would get it all. And that gave me time to research all of the families, and then proceeded to get their stones, and you can see the number that have had to had new bases put in them.
Mary kept watch over the cemetery from her farm next door. One day she intercepted someone returning a gravestone.
I was headed from town out to the farm, and I came across the side road, and there was somebody in a car. So I just pulled off the road, and they were returning a stone. They had actually taken their ancestor's stone and had it refinished, and they were bringing it back, and they knew that they weren't supposed to remove them from the cemetery. And I thought, I'll never tell anybody. And then same route coming across there was a couple who were sitting at the tailgate of their pickup having their lunch in the cemetery. I said, "Do you have anybody buried here?" "Oh no, we don't know anybody here at all." So
one day, Mary's husband Jim came in with some news.
I was getting dinner ready for probably several men besides my husband, and it actually was Jim came in. He said, "There's somebody over at the cemetery," and I said, "Oh, okay," and I just dropped what I was doing in the kitchen and jumped in the car and came over here. I wonder what family that was. It was probably a McNeill. There's a lot of McNeills here. I just come over to talk to them and tell them what I was doing, and they told me what they were doing, so that's how we connected. And I missed that when I moved to town.
Mm-hmm. Mary MacKay started researching the people buried in Rusk Cemetery. She recorded the dates on gravestones and consulted living family members. In 2004, she published Record of Burials in Rusk Cemetery.
So I started right there at the gate, and I went that way to the end of in order, and then I came back, and then I went that way on the next row. And each place, each thing that is listed is tells who's there and who isn't there that should be, and who they're related to. You know, like daughter of number 20 or son of number 25. So they're all connected. And there also is an index. So other than somebody finding me to get information to where their ancestors are buried, it's in here.
Okay. Mary was fascinated by the early pioneers' stories and decided to narrate their lives in a series of books. She gave the profits from book sales to the township.
Money that I took in, that I made from when I wrote the family stories of the people that are buried here, and then when I sold the books to their descendants, the money all went to a fund in the township shed, township office. To pay for all that, it came out of township money, because I don't know whether I ever knew how much went in from what my donation to it was, but it got so that I think they weren't telling me what
what the bill was.
No, I'm sure they never did. I just kept saying, "Is there, have you got enough money to do this?" Oh yeah, there's lots of money there. That was Bern Wepler's line, and I said, all right, I believe you.
Eventually, Mary wrote 20 books on the families of Bruce County. Her style is creative nonfiction. She tells factual stories, but with imagined dialogue.
Any other research that I have I had done before I wrote these books was like genealogy, you down through the generations of people, and I couldn't do that with these people because I didn't have anybody in the present generation except for that this book down Petticoat Lane. I knew a man who lived down the road who knew this family. This is one of the more recent families than they weren't, well, I guess they were pioneers too. So I started out to write up this story of the Dara family. And when I had it done, it was only the father and mother and their 4 children, and of information. And I thought, well, I can't write a book about that. I'll have to get some more information. So I set this information aside, and I started looking into families and did a book about the McNeill, and then about the Galbreath family was a big wide one. And I wanted to write it in narrative form, in story form, but based on truth, which is hard for really die-hard genealogists to do, to make up part of the story, but that's what I had to make it into a story. I really enjoyed writing these books. First 2, maybe 3, I wrote by hand and had somebody type it for me, and then correct the typing, and then redo it, and that's not any fun. By the time I was into the 3rd one, I guess, I had a computer, so that worked good. This is my first one to do by a computer.
After the cemetery was restored, Mary did hit one dead end.
One of the men was digging around in the bushes over there, those are lilacs, and found this stone. And it's got a date on it and a name, and I thought, oh, I should be able to research that. And I couldn't find anybody, one of those dead ends. So but that I would say is the only one in this whole cemetery that stumped me, and I couldn't. Maybe if I went, maybe if I was at it now, there's so many new ways to look things up, whereas I did most of this not by computer, or not by find a grave or all those things. I did it the hard way.
Well, and Mary would have done this cemetery long before there was the use of computers, and you had to go to the museum, no doubt, for every piece of information you could find.
Yeah, I did.
And yet you found so much.
Mary worked hard at it.
It's a good retirement project, right there. Okay. That's probably all you need to know.
The restoration project, started by Mary MacKay, was a resounding success. Rusk Cemetery today boasts green lawns with flowers, shrubs, and trees, inviting the visitor to stroll about and enjoy the peaceful scene.